Hey guys, if you're a borrower, a lender, or a broker working with construction or rehab loans, this video's for you. Now, I was at a convention recently and I was shocked at how many lenders I talked to that were doing construction loans and rehab loans the wrong way. So to get you the right answers, I reached out to Nema from Geraci Law Firm to discuss the rules, the regs, as well as some best practices regarding fund control holdbacks. 3 topics we're going to discuss. 1, can you charge interest on your holdbacks? 2, do you need special language in your loan docs? 3, who's got to handle the holdback funds? So stick around, we don't want you to end up getting red flagged.
What did you tell the borrower you were going to do in the promissory note in terms of charging interest? And a lot of times it's kind of vague. You'll say interest on the unpaid principal balance. Well, what is the unpaid principal balance? Does it include the holdback? Does it not include the holdback? It's a really important distinction to make. And so a lot of times you want to clarify in the note, unpaid principal balance or principal means this. It includes any sort of amounts held back or reserved by the lender. Right? So as long as there's clear language, you can charge interest, but you're going to want to make sure that there is clear language because, ultimately, I think that if you were in front of a court on an issue like this and it was somewhat vague, I think the courts would prefer to be deferential to the borrower, right? Because it seems kind of inequitable that these are monies that the borrower doesn't have, yet they're being charged interest on.
So based on what you would do by adding a paragraph or so to somebody's loan docs, or to having an addendum or some additional contract between them, you've now practically eliminated that as a potential risk.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make an argument in any case in which the borrower can claim, oh, you can't charge interest when we contractually agreed to charge interest on these holdbacks. Business and Professions Code 10232.3 and also 10238 regulate the holdback funds. There's 2 different rules that can apply when the funds are held back. So if the balance being held back for construction purposes is less than $100,000, there are different rules than when it is greater than $100,000. If it's less than $100,000, the rule is the lender must fully fund at time of escrow closing, but those funds can go back to the lender. Whereas if it's greater than $100,000, not only must they fully fund, but it must go to a third-party funds control, and that funds control now must disperse the funds upon doing inspections with a licensed contractor. Those loan documents should have a draw schedule, which says, here's the amount I will pay you based on what is being performed. Right? As detailed as you can get, there's clarity in the agreement as to when you should and when you should not be giving those funds. Business and Professions Code 10232.3 and 10238, they apply to licensed brokers, right? And loans arranged by those licensed brokers. But if the loan was not arranged by a licensed broker or made by a licensed broker, let's say, for example, here in California, let's say it was made by a California finance lender, then those loans are altogether exempt from these restrictions, and so therefore that lender can hold back the funds. The next question is, should they? Just imagine the liability that is now out there.
What about a situation where you originated it as a CFL, and I bought it from you and I'm BRE?
Typically what we'd recommend in a situation like this, which is, hey, when I made the loan, it was perfectly fine for me to retain these funds and not put in any kind of third-party funds control, but now I've brought it into the BRE side of this, so now I've got these regulations that are going to be in place, and it's kind of unclear because when you look at that code section, most of this activity that's being regulated deals with issues that are going to arise at origination, right? Did you get a license appraisal? Do you have a draw schedule, right? Things that you could have only have done at time of origination. And so the question is, well, what should you do since you simply cannot comply with those sections? What's the best, kind of practice in this area? And what I would do is if I had purchased from a CFL and I was operating under BRE, I would put the funds and I'd set them aside in a third-party funds control at that point to demonstrate that we were trying to comply with as much as possible at this juncture.
What else could they do?
You could also get an appraisal at that time as well, right? I mean, there's nothing stopping you from getting a property appraised halfway through construction. Right, so if you wanted to, you could take that extra step. That's especially if you're going to be arranging the loan to a third party that may be unlicensed, for example, right? Well, you're a broker, you're a fiduciary to that investor. Did you do as much as possible to protect that investor? Right. So, a lot of times it's taking kind of that extra step.
Thanks, Nema. That's valuable information, and I appreciate it. So, some bullet points worth noting. Number 1, if you're a BRE broker or a lender, you can hold funds, as long as it is under $100,000 and you have fully funded the loan first. Now, if you decide to hold on to these funds, I'd recommend maintaining a separate bank account that's used solely for your holdbacks. This way you can show that you were never short on your obligations to your borrowers. Number 2, draw schedules and appraisals are required in most cases. Now, you may even want to get updated values and an updated opinion of cost to completion before selling your loan to a buyer. Number 3, if you are selling notes and you're selling them with holdbacks, your buyer cannot net fund. They are required to show their ability to account for the holdback funds. We recently had a file where the buyer of the note could not make good on the construction draw. This messed up the borrower, and it almost landed the sellers of the note up in court. So, guys, the bottom line is, aside from following the regulations, you need to show that you're making good faith efforts to be clear with and to protect your borrower, and if applicable, your note buyer. So if you're a broker or a lender who wants to make sure that you're doing things the right way, or if you're a borrower who wants peace of mind that your funds are properly held and accounted for, consider Del Toro for processing, doc prep, and fund control services. Thanks a lot for sticking around. Drew Lewis, Del Toro Loan Servicing. Cheers.